Good morning, everyone. February 21st, 2026. And I'm doing this video because a friend of mine had asked a question, and I figured instead of just posting it to him, it was a long answer to a question. And instead of just posting it to him, I figured I'd post it here because if he's asking it, I'm sure other people are asking it, and it certainly has went through my mind. So here goes. The question was something along the lines of, if a bunch of sick, satanic pedophile people are in control of all of this stuff, do we want to necessarily bring it down because it's going to cause some suffering? So on the one sense, he's struggling with it because on the one hand, yes, morally, of course, we should depose this and stop it and bring it down. On the other hand, I guess he's approaching this from kind of a utilitarianistic viewpoint, in that it's going to do a lot, it's going to cause a lot of untold suffering, that which may or may not have to happen. So I jotted some notes down. I'm going to try to go through this quickly. Unfortunately, it's probably a 15-minute answer-ish, but I think you'll all get something from it. Hopefully you do. But I got to start this off with a story that happened a long time ago because it parallels what you're talking about. Before my first wife and I got married, we were at an apartment. A game was being played, and I was kind of a prude back then. I didn't feel like it was a proper, right game, if you will. And I wasn't the only one. Another, a boyfriend of one of her friends, and I just kind of left. We didn't really want to partake in it. So fast forward, we're married. We're having a conversation. This was a couple years after that. And this got brought into it because the conversation was, is it okay to lie? And her argument was, yes, it's okay to lie as long as it's a little white lie and you're sparing the feelings or the suffering of the other person. Okay. My argument to this as to why we need to bring it down, that's what my argument is going to be. And it goes along the same lines as this. And my answer to her was, who are you to decide what is right or wrong for an individual? A lot of things that we talk about, some of the things that we can prove, some of the things that we can rely on, actual factual data we can rely on. Other things that we discuss, and you all see it, it's feelings, it's emotions, it's belief systems, right? And part of my answer is logical and factual, and part of my answer also comes from my own personal belief system. And some of that, I've read some of Dolores Cannon. I kind of believe what she says, that we're here to learn limits and emotions as humans. So that stands to reason then that as a species, we're also here to learn the same thing, limits and emotions, and how to navigate all of that. Whatever the life lesson is for all of us, humanity is experiencing that as well at the same time. And so we can say, who are any of us to get in the way of the lesson that needs to be learned, right? Who are you to stop that? I'll frame this in the context of a relationship, because that's what it was. If someone comes to you and says, and sometimes they don't ever tell you the reason why they're asking you a question, but instinctively, intuitively, they feel like something is wrong, right? And they come to you and say, what do you think about so-and-so? And you tell a white lie because you don't want to hurt their feelings and you don't want to cause suffering. And you say, oh, I think they're wonderful. I think you guys are so cute together. And this happens to other friends that they ask. And no one tells them the truth because they don't want to hurt their feelings, right? Well, all of a sudden, they're trying to calibrate themselves. And now all of a sudden they think it's them, which also is causing suffering. And if they go along through life this way, it's going to cause suffering. Secondly, who are you to stand in the way of the lesson that needs to be learned for them? Maybe they need to learn this lesson. Maybe they do need to be hurt. Third, maybe the law of unintended consequences isn't a negative thing. Maybe it turns out to be a positive thing. And they go, and you tell them the truth, and they go, thank you so much for saying that. I felt it too, and I'm ready to be done. And they go off and enjoy their life. Anybody who's been divorced, at least that I know, that's been through the process of it, it's hell. But once you get to the other side, you're like, man, I don't know why I waited so long. Same thing. And I think it echoes this whole thing, this conversation that we're having, and why we need to bring it down. We don't know the consequences of it. We don't know that. I think part of it is programming too, and all the movies that we have watched and seen and shows that if society were to collapse, all of a sudden there's going to be this huge amount of chaos and pillaging and rape and murder and all this stuff. Well, we already have that anyway, right? But somehow it's going to increase 10x. Well, maybe it does, and maybe it doesn't. We really don't know that, right? We don't know that it's going to end up that way. Maybe people can come together. Certainly there's going to be some factions of society that devolve into madness, but we already have that. But we also, I think, take away the option that maybe humanity rises to the occasion. Maybe we all start talking to our neighbors again. Maybe we all see the greater meaning in all of this. I mean, we're back up. Go rise up above all of this, even to the point where you're looking down on the whole universe as a whole. We're a tiny speck of sand hurling through the atmosphere at thousands of miles an hour, or hurling through the cosmos at thousands of miles an hour. And it's like, at that perspective, you look down and go, what the hell are we doing here as human beings? This whole thing, I'm just looking at notes because I wrote some down. Another component to it is the longer this goes on, the worse it's going to get. People that have ran for Congress like Ross Perot and Ron Paul back in the 80s and into the 90s have talked about financial stuff, right? Economic stuff. And the longer that we allow a central bank to inflate our currency and monetize the debt, which debases it, the more suffering there's going to be. The same thing is said for here. The longer this goes on, the more suffering that there is. And these people that are trafficking and into this stuff, and by the way, I've read some of the sick shit that's going on. It's dark. Like, it's dark. People talk about intrusive thoughts, and I have some from time to time. It's like, where'd that thought come from? That's crazy. This shit is beyond. It's so out there on the terms on the level of evil that it hurts me to even think about. And you want this to continue on? The more this continues on, the more suffering that there's going to be. And as it relates even to the economy and our currency, the more they inflate it, the more suffering that there is. And don't you want that to end? We don't know how much. I mean, think about how much suffering that you're alleviating from stopping it right now versus if you allow this to continue on, how much more suffering, generations of suffering that there's going to be. I really do. This topic touches on other things, so I really would like to do other videos on it. And I'm sure there's other things I can say. In fact, there is, because I did a previous video and it got just a little too long. So I'm trying to shorten this up. But this topic and these people that are controlling this, they're the head of the snake. So when we do this, we're cutting off the head of the snake. Now, there's another aspect to this that also becomes that's strictly just a belief system. And it comes in the form of what I think is complete and utter nonsense. I absolutely could be wrong on this. But there are a certain group of people out there that believe that Trump has been endowed by our Creator to bring about a revolution. And I'm going to presuppose that these people, these QAnon, white hat, there's a chess game being played. People are going to say, don't bring it all down, because that's what they want. They're losing control of all of this. And I'm not disagreeing. They have literally told us this, that they would rather see this country burn and this system be brought down than to have certain different power structures take over. So I'm not saying that that part is wrong. They definitely want this. I actually have said this myself for the last 20 years. If they lose control of this, they're going to flip the switch. They're going to turn the lights off. That definitely could be the case. The problem being is that time and time again, humanity has stopped from rising up and doing what is right because they believe that a savior is going to save them. And the white hats and the QAnon bullshit and this chess game playing people, they think that Trump is here to do that. Like as if there's some surgical, precisionary plan that's being unveiled. And it's going to alleviate a ton of suffering. And I can get into GESARA and NESARA and all that BS too. But folks, it was part of the question that I asked a long time ago about Trump. How much time are you willing to give this? Because the more this goes on, and by the way, they'll give excuses as to, such as more child trafficking has stopped and more arrests have been made under Trump than anybody else prior. And I say to that, prove it. Prove that that's the case. Prove that there have been that many. We don't know. Like I said, some of this stuff is based in logic and reason and arguing from a certain philosophical standpoint. The other is just simply belief. I have my own beliefs too. I mentioned Dolores Cannon and why human beings are here, to learn limits and emotions. But maybe that is true. Maybe that is not true. Just like maybe Trump is here to bring in a better world. But maybe he's not. Maybe he's here to string this thing along just long enough to where Peter Thiel and the technocrats can get control of a grid, an artificial intelligence apparatus that can completely control humanity. Because that's coming too. They're building that out right now. Do you want that? I say cut the head off the snake and get back to what humans should be doing, which is enjoying life and experiencing life how they want to. So this isn't a separate topic necessarily of just whether or not to bring child sex predators and the system down. It's the whole thing, because it's all wrapped up into one. You can't touch one of it and not touch the other it, because they, like I said, these people are at the heads of a lot of governments around the world and a lot of industry and technology and all of it. So I don't know. I think, again, to reiterate the law of unintended consequences, it doesn't have to get messy. It doesn't have to get bloody. Humanity can rise to the occasion. I do have hope that it will if the lights go out. I do believe that. I'm not naive enough to think that there won't be suffering. But again, measure that suffering versus what's happening now versus what will happen if this continues to go on. So anyway, that still got long, but hope that answered your question, man. And I'll catch you all later.